Strange activity.
The cattle are found mutilated.
Alien sightings.
People believe that there are entries from where these UFOs go in and go out.
Unexplainable disappearances.
They came from 1943, then popped up in 1983.
Skinwalker Ranch. Do we now know why a family really had to abandon their home?
Even the Pentagon got in on the act.
Montauk. Will new insight shed light on the truth behind teleportation?
It was something the Army never wanted to talk about.
Mount Shasta. Will fresh theories finally explain why this mountain is a magnet for weird phenomena?
So what you've got is an absolute laser focusing tool of energy.
From strange activity underground to those 14,000 feet high. Will new information and theories bring us closer to solving these ultimate mysteries? Crop formations.
The Skinwalker Ranch was definitely a hot spot for paranormal activity.
Mutilated animals.
There were a lot of very, very weird experiences there.
A strange, unknown being.
There have been sightings of strange creatures, cattle mutilations, UFOs.
Located just outside Ballard, Utah, is a mysterious 500-acre ranch that is renowned for its numerous first-person accounts of disturbing, unexplained phenomena. Skinwalker Ranch. 1994. Northeastern Utah. Terry Sherman and his family are moving into their dream property, a beautiful 500-acre ranch.
Skinwalker Ranch is truly one of the most unique and jaw-dropping areas in the world.
It was a 480-acre ranch. It was bought by a cattle rancher who wanted to raise some very expensive cattle, and it was sold at an extremely reasonable price.
When they move in, they discover the front door is heavily chained. Even more confounding, every door inside the house has a deadbolt, as if the previous tenant was trying to keep something out. But it gets even weirder. Early one morning, while heading out to the field, Terry finds unusual markings etched into the ground. He has no idea how these markings were made or what they mean. He hears strange voices coming as if from nowhere. Days later, the mysterious incidents take a more disturbing turn. Terry had been losing lots of his prized cattle. He was unaware of what had happened to them. Early one evening, Terry and his son make a shocking discovery and witness cattle that are strangely mutilated.
There is no evidence of blood on the ground.
The last straw for the Shermans was a weird and terrifying experience.
He and his family were outside enjoying the fresh air when a very large wolf-like creature approached them. So the rancher got a shotgun and a rifle, and he shot that wolf at point-blank range. There was no blood. There was no evidence that it had been shot. It began to walk away, and they shot it again. They tracked it for over a mile, but it simply disappeared without a trace. This experience was so weird, and so many cattle were lost that the family decided to sell the ranch.
The Shermans had lasted just 2 years. What plagued them during this time? Could it have been a curse? The English word skinwalker is derived from Navajo language, where its exact translation is, by means of it, it goes on all fours. In the American Southwest, the Navajo, Hopi, Ute, and other tribes have their own version of the skinwalker. A malevolent person capable of transforming themselves into a wolf, coyote, bear, bird, or any other animal. When the transformation is complete, the skinwalker assumes the speed, strength, or cunning of the animal whose shape it has taken. Shapeshifters are common in almost every culture worldwide, from Europe, Asia, and Africa to North America. And at Utah's Skinwalker Ranch, notions of a shapeshifter rose to the surface.
For decade after decade, there have been sightings of skinwalkers.
The whole mystery of the Skinwalker Ranch started out with ancient Navajo myths and legends.
I can't put it into words scientifically, but according to Navajo legend, the skinwalker was kind of an evil, shape-shifting witch, and that one shaman could place a curse on another shaman or upon a certain area of land.
All of this ties back into Navajo folklore. The Skinwalker in Navajo lore is the malevolent witch. And the Navajo are very secretive about this. To people outside the tribe, they don't divulge the full extent of their beliefs about what the Skinwalker actually is. So right from the outset, all this is shrouded in mystery and uncertainty.
Tribes used curses to protect their territory and harm their enemies.
If we look into the history of the Ute tribe, we find that there is a history of a neighboring tribe that was impinging upon their territory.
The rival tribe were the Navajo. When they were unable to win the disputed land by force, legend has it that they laid a curse on it instead, the very land where Skinwalker Ranch now sits. Descendants of both tribes believe the curse is responsible for bizarre manifestations that continue to this day.
Joseph Jr. Hicks has been investigating this for over 50 years. He was the local science teacher, and back in the 60s, people began giving him specific case reports. The tribal police would funnel reports to him because he was the only person that really took it seriously. So now Joseph Jr. Hicks has over 700 sightings reports.
Could the strange wolf-like creature that the Sherman shot at have actually been a shape-shifting skinwalker? Is it the reason for the padlocked doors and the culprit behind the grisly cattle deaths? Or is there another suspect, possibly not of this earth? The alien theory begins with the person who bought the Sherman's ranch, millionaire Robert Bigelow.
Robert Bigelow is an interesting character. He is a multi-millionaire. He made his fortune in the budget hotel business, and he then branched into aerospace and specifically space.
Robert Bigelow is very, and has always been by all accounts, very interested in the paranormal phenomenon.
When he heard some of these stories, felt strongly about it enough to buy the place. I mean, this is a 500-acre ranch in Utah, so it's not cheap. He had heard stories. Now, some of those stories involved UFO sightings, some involved animal mutilation cases, others involved what might be termed almost poltergeist phenomena, the idea that there was some sort of presence there. But he thought, if weird things are happening here, this is the perfect opportunity to take a closer look. So Robert Bigelow, a true believer in extraterrestrial visitation, bought the ranch.
The Shermans are only too happy to sell. It leaves everyone wondering, what exactly does Robert Bigelow and other experts believe is going on at Skinwalker Ranch?
When one of the world's leading aerospace tycoons purchases a place like Skinwalker Ranch, what does that tell you? It tells you that there's something phenomenal going on. There is absolutely no way that somebody with a career like Robert Bigelow would put it on the line for something that he didn't feel could offer something back.
Is it possible that multimillionaire Robert Bigelow believes that this ranch could be a hotspot for alien encounters?
Robert Bigelow's investment has inspired an entire community to believe that there's something special about the Skinwalker Ranch.
Robert Bigelow hired scientists to go to that ranch to secretly investigate what was occurring at the ranch. They had many, many scientific instruments to attempt to find scientific evidence.
And that raises the question, what kind of work was it? So you have all this perfect storm, and one has to wonder, was this a millionaire believer simply indulging his passion project? Or is the government in the mix there?
An important clue to that mystery was discovered when another one of Bigelow's investors was revealed: the Pentagon.
Even the Pentagon got in on the act because their ATIP program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, does seem to have had at least some peripheral involvement with investigating some of the phenomenon alleged to be going on at the ranch.
The government gave him money to conduct research at Skinwalker Ranch.
$22 million, in fact, to study UFO phenomena, and not just at the ranch. And in 2017, the New York Times reported that the Defense Department wanted these funds hidden in its budget. Just how much of that money did go towards researching activity at Skinwalker Ranch?
It's a classic example of what in government is called low probability, high impact. In other words, you don't maybe think it's particularly likely, but the payoff, if you get a success, is so big, it's such a game-changing result that you think you should be in the game. You have the Pentagon, you have Bigelow, you have the private investors. And it's a very complex situation. You follow the trail sometimes, and you never quite know where it's going to lead.
Does it lead to aliens?
There are decades of declassified government documents that will paint a very clear picture about the fact that the United States government knew that we were being visited, perhaps by extraterrestrials.
Robert Bigelow has gone on the record as stating he believes Earth is being visited by intelligent extraterrestrials and that there is some sort of interaction going on. Robert Bigelow has big money, and he was able to use that money to put it where his beliefs were. And as a consequence, the story spread like wildfire, and now the whole UFO community believes that there's something genuinely special and mysterious and paranormal about this piece of land.
There is evidence to support the alien theory. For years, residents of Ballard, Utah, just 10 miles from Skinwalker Ranch, have claimed they have seen strange objects in the skies.
There have been sightings of UFOs up close and personal.
The Skinwalker Ranch was definitely a hot spot for UFOs. This activity has been going on for 15 generations.
But the most compelling evidence is the close encounter former owners, the Shermans, experienced themselves.
There was a little ball of light about the size of a softball that was very mysteriously moving around this family when they were outside. And the owner let his dogs loose, and the dogs chased this orb into the forest.
But their dogs never returned. Terry searches in the forest for them and discovers strange, oily spots. The dogs are never found.
There is something credible occurring at that ranch.
My theory about Skinwalker Ranch is there is some sort of portal that is utilized for creatures, for UFOs, for paranormal activity to kind of manifest through.
They can enter through that hole and then disappear through that portal again.
Was Bigelow successful in his mission to prove the existence of extraterrestrial visitation?
This has been the million-dollar question.
But I don't really think they found anything because he sold it.
Skinwalker Ranch was sold to Adamantium.
In April 2016, the ranch was sold to Adamantium Real Estate, LLC. And in February 2017, they trademarked the name Skinwalker Ranch.
What I can tell you is that the person or people that own Adamantium are conducting very serious research.
Strange phenomena are still reported at Skinwalker Ranch. But who or what is causing them remains unknown for now. One of the most secretive hotspots of strange encounters is a government facility that could blow your mind, literally.
Montauk is really the sad story of bad experiments. Their mind was wiped clean.
Top secret experiments. Mind control. Time travel. In Long Island, New York, there sits a legendary decommissioned Air Force facility whose lurid legacy has inspired numerous films, including The Manchurian Candidate and hit series Stranger Things. Montauk.
All sorts of stories revolving around Montauk.
Some bad things happened there. The Army did some horrible things.
People were subjected to various types of experiments.
It was probably something the Army never wanted to talk about.
The Montauk Air Force Station, or Camp Hero as it's officially called, was established in 1942 on Long Island. Its initial purpose was to repel a potential German attack during World War II. Decades later, rumors began to surface of alleged top-secret experiments. Perhaps even by those who this site was supposed to attack, the scientists who worked under the Nazi regime.
This has a long history, goes back to Nazi Germany. Germans were brought into the United States under Operation Paperclip.
But at the request of the United States, many V-2 engineers chose to work in this country.
And they continued experiments now on behalf of the US government to use mind control on people to enhance their performance.
The Army conducted some experiments which turned out to be horrible.
Clandestine activity at Montauk is attributed to hidden areas of the facility.
So it's all happening underground.
The one thing that the government is good at, they don't want you to see something, they're going to put it underground. And I think everything's below ground at Montauk. They do it at Area 51, they do it all over the country. Areas like New Mexico.
Proof of the underground facility finally surfaced in 1992, when former Montauk engineer Preston Nichols brought out a best-selling book, The Montauk Project: Experiments in Time.
The Montauk Project is basically a number of people that have come forward saying that they were involved in this above top secret program that was based at Montauk. And these people say that experiments involved a number of different advanced technologies such as teleportation, telepathy, telekinesis, and mind control. Preston Nichols, he was the guy that was actually involved in the running of the experiments. He worked with the people that were actually being experimented on.
So, what do experts really believe was happening at Montauk?
There's talk of time travel, and it ties into the Philadelphia experiment.
The Philadelphia experiment was an alleged military project. Its goal was to make warships invisible to radar. This experiment was to take place on a newly commissioned warship called the USS Eldridge, which was equipped with numerous large generators that could power a new kind of magnetic field. Rather than the ship becoming invisible to radar, the story is that two crewmen were allegedly transported through time.
Al Bielek and Duncan Cameron, they were crew members on the USS Eldridge, and say that they came from 1943 and popped up in 1983 in Montauk. Because they applied a huge electrical static charge to the ship, they basically bent space-time and teleported. There was some kind of weird temporal connection between the Philadelphia experiment in 1943 and the Montauk Project in 1983, that this was the time when they came out. So they suffered a number of temporal anomalies.
I demand to know what's going on now.
So, is Montauk a base where experiments with time travel occur? Or are these experiments about something much more shocking?
There was a lot of bad things that came up on Montauk. It was probably something the Army never wanted to talk about.
Montauk Air Force Station sparked controversy amid claims that scientists were experimenting with time travel. Then, evidence emerged of other, more disturbing activities.
The government will spin a lot of stories and try to lead you off the path and send you down these rabbit holes and start talking about time travel and aliens and things that just aren't true, to derail you from the true story of the atrocities that were committed during the MK Ultra experiments.
Montauk was part of a long history of experimentation on human subjects to understand human performance under very stressful situations. This was something that the US Senate investigated in the 1970s, and it was admitted by the CIA that it was actually involved in these mind control experiments called MK Ultra. MK Ultra was trying to understand how the human mind could be subjected to severe trauma to induce fragmentation of the mind, where the different fragments can be trained to perform different things. Have incredible physical endurance or trained to do anything. Conduct espionage with photographic memories and so forth. MK Ultra, because the human mind could be conditioned through this kind of trauma-based mind control to do just about anything you can imagine. So this was something that was being conducted by the CIA right through the 50s, using Operation Paperclip by German scientists, right up until the 80s.
I believe Montauk is really the sad story of bad experiments using torture, drugs, and things like that to create an assassin that could assassinate somebody and then forget the whole thing because their mind was wiped clean.
People could be trained to be assassins or could be trained to do just about anything you can imagine. All that was needed was a trigger word, which was typically a code word. And all of a sudden, that killer is activated and whatever the instructions were would be carried out. It would be very easy to manipulate military recruits into participating in some of these programs because they're typically very gung-ho, and so they're asked, well, do you want to participate in a top-secret experiment?
Some experiments turned out to be on their own people. The Army conducted some experiments which turned out to be horrible in many ways. They used LSD, they used all kinds of torture. That tells you that they'll do just about anything.
Sometimes you do think the unthinkable, and we discover and invent things that were inconceivable a few decades ago. So when you have something like Montauk, you have a facility undeniably involved in all sorts of cutting-edge research. What's going on there? I don't have all the answers, but we know it's a matter of public record through declassified documents that the US government was recruiting and trying to train soldiers to see whether this could be used as part of standard intelligence gathering techniques.
When there are things that the government has done wrong, they'll do anything to lead you off the path. So if they can get you thinking about teleportation and the Philadelphia experiment and things like that, then you're not talking about the horrible experience that went on with drugs and torture and deprivation.
Montauk Air Force Station was decommissioned in the 1980s and is now owned by the New York State Office of Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation. One of the most mysterious facilities in the U.S. is now a tourist attraction.
The actual air station was actually turned over to the National Park Service and is now Camp Hero, and people can go visit and walk around, but it's under the ground, the things that are very important.
"3,000 miles away in Northern California is another hotspot of weird activity. But this location has an elevation of 14,000 feet, Mount Shasta.
When you're talking about an entire mountain, Shasta is literally a hotbed of vortex activity. Why?
It's a mountain of disappearances, a mountain of energy, a mountain of mystery. For years, locals and visitors have told of strange events on this California mountain.
Mount Shasta is a beautiful landmark that has a magnetic appeal that draws people just looking for the scenery, looking to get away.
Extremely beautiful. That part of the country is gorgeous. The mountain itself is gorgeous.
Mount Shasta is actually on the eastern ridge of the Ring of Fire. So you've got Mount Shasta, Mount Rainier, Mount Hood. You're dealing with the volcano. That's a whole lot of energy.
There was something special, something very different about it.
There are so many strange stories that come from Mount Shasta. There have been mysterious disappearances, hikers or tourists who were never seen again.
People would see craft landing.
What's fascinating about this is videos that people are taking have been posted up on YouTube, get snapped down. You really have to ask yourself, why are these videos being removed?
It's very, very, very bizarre.
What secrets does the mountain hold? Is it cursed? A beacon that attracts extraterrestrial activity? Or can a new theory solve this American mystery? Mount Shasta, California, 2013, 10 p.m.
Hope we can see it again tomorrow.
After a day of hiking, a husband and wife set up camp and turn in for the night. Sleeping in the open under a canopy of stars, she wakes up. She hears odd sounds in the woods and feels a strange compulsion to follow them. When her husband wakes up the next morning, his wife is nowhere to be seen. After a frantic search, thinking that his wife has disappeared,
Jesse!
He finally finds her lying face down, hundreds of feet from the campsite. She is one of the lucky ones.
There have been a number of really inexplicable disappearances that seem to be different from the more mundane, run-of-the-mill.
If so many people going missing isn't perplexing enough, numerous witnesses have reported seeing UFOs hovering over the mountain. But are they what they seem?
Mount Shasta is itself a tremendous peak. And one of the things that people often see when traveling to Mount Shasta are lenticular clouds. And I certainly saw one of these myself when I traveled there. It looked like a spacecraft. It looked like a huge spacecraft about a mile in diameter, just sitting right over the peak. Many people have seen these, and at the time I didn't think too much of it. I just thought, well, that's an incredible shape. And later on, I began to immerse myself in literature about extraterrestrial visitation and came across some people saying that Mount Shasta is a base for the Galactic Confederation.
The Galactic Confederation is like the United Nations of the galaxy. It is made up of many thousands of civilizations, or star nations.
There are people who come because they are ufologists and they are following up UFO sighting reports and they're looking for UFOs.
People would see craft landing. They would see beings coming out of these craft.
Alien visitations? Humans vanishing? What does it mean? One of the most incredible things about Mount Shasta is its geological makeup.
We know a lot about crystals. We know that we love to have them around our house. We wear them, it makes us feel good. Yet the best part about the crystals in Mount Shasta, they are the energy focusing type. These are clear quartz crystals. They are also amethyst crystals. So what you've got is an absolute laser focusing tool of energy. Different crystals are responsible for relaying different bandwidths of energy. And this has to do with how they bend light and electromagnetic energy through the crystal. People think crystals, metaphysically, hippies, hang it from your neck, hang it from your window. I mean, we get crazy with crystals, except for the fact that NASA is growing them in space stations.
Does this unique combination of crystals make Mount Shasta a beacon of energy? Even a portal to other galaxies?
Because of the way in which the crystal molecules are layered and organized, they can hold a tremendous amount of information. A crystal is nature's computer chip. It really is something that can hold a tremendous amount of information, and when you learn to be able to interact with that crystalline life form, because it is a form of life. Crystals are not just inanimate objects, that's a form of life, and once you are in resonance with that particular crystal, it will reveal to you the incredible information it has stored within it.
Some investigators believe it is the information on this computer chip that creates portals to travel between galaxies.
Mount Shasta is definitely a portal to many different places. If you walk through one of these portals, you can be transported through space-time to another location. You can come out at the other end and experience something, and then you can be brought back through that portal. Various different advanced extraterrestrial cultures have been able to build these portals, and there's some of these portals at Mount Shasta, and they're used for larger things like spacecraft.
They are coming through vortex points in space-time from other points in the galaxies.
Many people believe that there are literally entries to Mount Shasta where these UFOs go in and go out.
Could this explain both the alien sightings and the human disappearances?
When you're talking about an entire mountain, I mean, this is a powerhouse. It's a battery pack for energy focusing crystalline content. Wow, what you've got in Shasta is literally a hotbed of vortex activity.
But what if the unexplained events around the California peak are due not to crystals, but to something darker?
The Native Americans thought that this was an evil place.
Mount Shasta is legendary for unexplained phenomena. People disappearing into thin air, strange flying objects, unknown entities. Some believe these events are due to extraterrestrials. But could the answer lie with people indigenous to the mountain?
I don't think that it's a coincidence that very often when we encounter areas that are associated with the paranormal today, that we find Native American myths and legends that hint at the same exact sorts of experiences. I think there must be something at Mount Shasta that creates this belief.
The Native American Indians recognized Mount Shasta from the very beginning as being where the Great Spirit lives. So they worship Mount Shasta as a manifestation of the Great Spirit. The Native Americans believe that this is where the Great Spirit helped create the planet. So it's been a big part of their philosophy. and their religious belief systems.
The local Shasta people believe the Great Spirit conjured up evil elementals to keep people away from the sacred mountain.
The Native Americans who lived on and around Mount Shasta were afraid. They believed that it was cursed. They thought that people who went to the top of the mountain were doomed. They believed that there were evil gods, spirits of the mountain that people could encounter there. Part of that was their beliefs in a landscape that was filled with mystery, that was filled with non-human demons or gods that they could encounter. And for whatever reason, speaking about Mount Shasta specifically, they thought that this was a place to be avoided. It was a place where they didn't go, where they didn't want to go, and where they told people that they should avoid.
Could this explain the disappearances of hikers and the encounters with strange entities? One clue can be found on the rocks themselves.
In the vicinity of Mount Shasta, there exist Native American petroglyphs. They seem to show strange creatures, weird animals, distorted human shapes. And it's really interesting to look at these drawings and note the similarities between these mysterious ancient depictions and the appearances that people see. I think that there's an anomaly at Mount Shasta, and I think it's affected people for hundreds or even thousands of years. I think that it affected prehistoric Native Americans the same way that it affects people who go there today. It's a very old experience. It's older than us. It's existed before we did, I think. There are analogs between the monsters that we see now and the monsters that people saw hundreds of years ago and the weird drawings on the walls of caves made by our earliest human ancestors.
But not everyone is convinced the mystery is to be found in Native American superstition or ufology. Could Earth science hold the answer?
My strongest impression about Mount Shasta is that it contains some kind of anomaly that has an effect on the human mind in some very profound ways. I think that these really weird sightings could be hallucinations.
When you're dealing with a volcano, that's a whole lot of geothermal energy.
It's interesting to speculate that maybe there could be releases of gases from under the ground that could have effects on the human psyche.
Where you have that much pressure, it presses up, obviously, magma. It creates volcanoes. Well, magma is not the only thing that's coming up through Mount Shasta.
There are areas in our world that have toxic gases that come up out of the ground that can surprise people and where they can be overcome by fumes. And Mount Shasta could be a place like that. It's a large mountain. It's got glaciers on it that cover parts of the ground. We don't really know what's underneath those glaciers. And there could be something there, some prosaic thing that is causing people to become overcome by fumes, maybe even killing them.
There's something about that location that causes a little bit of, we'll call it a vibration for lack of a better description. And I've been there and I've had that feeling.
You felt different. There was a buzz, and if you felt elevated. I certainly felt elevated.
It's possible that there were volcanic gases or some other contaminants that cause hallucinations.
No one knows for certain the origin of the strange occurrences that take place on mysterious Mount Shasta. It hasn't scared away the steady stream of tourists attempting to share in its mystical, unworldly aura.